Welcome back to Tales by the Sea. Tales features personal stories for grown-ups, as you know. Last time we were together was March 8th, and a lot of water has gone under the bridge since then.
Yes.
But it's good to know you're out there somewhere, healthy and grounded. The theme today is It Matters. What now? 6 tellers will be telling their stories, and before we start, I want to salute every single one of them for tackling this theme and for digging into their own lives to share these stories with us. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "Our lives begin to end when we become silent about things that matter." I still believe sharing our stories and our visions matters, makes us a more complete and more compassionate community. So I thank all of you for showing up and jumping into this new technology. Believe me, it's taken all of us to create this. Each computer is different, some old, some new, with various and sometimes hysterical capabilities. So we'll do our best to be heard by all. Following the concert, we're going to have a talk back this time. You're welcome to stay and participate if you want, but during the concert, everyone will be muted to avoid distractions. Since you've already received the tellers' bios in the email, I'm going to introduce everyone with a quote they selected. Our first teller's quote is, "With the respect and appreciation it deserves, I embrace my past. With the care and attention that gives me joy, I'm present for my now. With vulnerability and enthusiasm that gives me strength, I look forward to my yet to be determined future." His story is entitled "Some People," and the spotlight now goes to Ty FANCE.
Thank you. Wow. Well, interesting. When I was asked to tell a story, to share a moment at this particular show, I have to tell you, I was taken aback. Actually, I was so thrown by the subject that I just knew I wasn't prepared because I'm not accustomed to talking publicly or sharing publicly. I typically do this kind of thing in my immediate family. And I leave it to the experts to handle those kind of situations. But I wanted to be in the show, so I said yes. And right away, I had this knot in my stomach. And then I asked myself, how can I relate, or can I? And about 4 or 5 days I spent trying to dig into my life, right? To find those moments that were so dramatic, so instrumental in changing me, that was wrapped around race. And I gotta be honest with you, after about 4 or 5 days, I had nothing. I came up with nothing. I never had those moments where, I mean, I was handcuffed and pulled out of my car and snatched and thrown to the hood. I've never been handcuffed and pinned to the ground for any time for that matter, let alone 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Yeah, I've been harassed. I've been, hurled slurs at by cowards in a group, or by a speeding car pass. And then it dawned on me that the reason I'm able to do those things and have those kind of experiences, it was not lost on the fact that it was by the efforts of brave men, women, and then sometimes children that I had these freedoms. And I have to admit, I was ashamed when I thought about that, because personally, I haven't really done much to further the situation, to make it better. But I'm thankful for this opportunity because I did get a chance to dig back. And after I found that moment where I had to admit to myself, I can do better, I can do more, I came up with a moment that at the time really didn't have a amount of significance that you thought it would have. But as I got older, it manifested itself into something I'm kind of glad I experienced. I was a shy 11-year-old at the time living in Houston, Texas. And I was working, I had a job selling candy for this company called the Youth in Action Boys Club. What we did is we sold large family-size candies to better neighborhoods. We'd go to these neighborhoods and go door to door selling candy. And I remember this particular day, I wasn't having the best day. I was usually a pretty good salesman, but this day it was just horrible. I had sold nothing, and it was hot. And I remember walking to this house. It was a one-story frame house, kind of a light brown color. The yard was manicured, you know. The door was this solid oak-looking door, and there was a used red tricycle on the porch. I remember lugging this box full of candy that I had not sold and probably melted by this time. And I got to the door, and I knocked on the door, and I just waited, trying to be non-threatening, innocent, you know, the best I could. And while I waited, I heard these little footprints, steps come to the door. And then the deadbolt turned. And when the door opened, there standing was this 3'2" little kid. He only had he had no shirt, no pants, no shoes on, just his Fruit of the Looms. And he was eating this red and white, we used to call it a bomb pop, but some people call it a rocket pop. And one of my favorites, by the way. And he must have been eating for a while because it had melted on his hand and around his mouth. It was all sticky and red. And then he had some dripping on his chest. He looked at me, and then he turned to his left. He only looked at me for like a second. But then he turned to his left, and without hesitating, I kid you not, he didn't miss a beat. He turned and yelled, "Mama, there's a nigger at the door." I remember thinking, nothing really. My mind just kind of went blank. And then I started processing what I've been told in my neighborhood on how to handle something like this. Supposedly, I had all kinds of options. I could punch him in the face. I could bust up in the door, just rage. I could do nothing. But I just stood there, just dumbfounded by what he just said to me. And he turned back and just looked at me. And by that time, he had grabbed his pop and he was about to put it into his mouth. He didn't get that far before his mom had ran to the door, grabbed him.
Turn off your Bluetooth.
Somebody's talking. Grabbed him, and before he could say another word, had shushed him away, right? The look of surprise and confusion on his face as she ushered him away. Still, I can remember that. And then she turned to me, pulled her hair back out of her face, and said, "I don't know where he learned that." So I was kind of numb by the moment, kind of upset with myself that I didn't do anything. And then, like a semi-conscious boxer who kind of instinctively started throwing punches and combinations, I went into my well-rehearsed, well-memorized sales pitch. "Hi, I'm Ty, and I work with the Youth in Action Boys Club. It's a true fact that if we are kept busy, we're kept out of trouble. Don't you agree? Well, we're raising funds to build a brand new gymnasium, and we'd hope that you would help us by making 1 or 2 purchases today. Will you do that for us? We're selling almond joys, mounds, peanut brittle," and before I can get to the rest of it, she blurted out to me, "I'll take all of them." I was stunned, so I was like, I was still going. "And we have," I'm sorry, what? "I'll take everything. How much for the whole box?" "The whole box?" "The whole box. How much for the whole box?" "Oh, well, let's see, I have 27 and $1.50, and that's $40.50. She stopped, looked, pulled back, and closed the door. As she closed the door, I heard the lock turn again. I stood out there, I think, for about a minute, and then I started to be a little self-conscious about standing out in front of this door of people I don't know And I was thinking she wasn't coming back. I started to feel bad, rejection. And then just as I was about to pick up the box, the door opened again. And she thrust the money out to me. She gave me cash. And she said, "That's $50, you can keep the change." I said, "Oh, all right." She reached down, grabbed the whole box, put it inside the door on the floor. And I said, "Thank you." She says, "Oh no, it's my pleasure." And I just nervously said, "Thank you" again. I think I must thanked her about 40 times. I just kept doing that because I was kind of still nervous. And as she closed the door, she looked at me one more time and then closed it. And I heard the lock turn again. What I remember about that day is I wasn't mad. I mean, I was supposed to be mad. That's what I was taught in my environment, be angry and lash out. But it wasn't in me to do that, so I didn't. My friends were mad. They all were mad. They all wanted to catch the city bus, go across that neighborhood into that house. But I didn't. So years later, after I became a father myself, it dawned on me that that 3-year-old kid learned that word and its associated meaning from the parents, his surroundings, his environment. And I thought, yeah, we parents, we do that. We tend to pass on our fears and our biases, our prejudices to our kids, which made me a little bit more conscious about what I do and say to my kids. Hell, when I'm around other kids, because, we're responsible, man. We're responsible, we're accountable. I know I am. Thank you.
Yay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
Ty, I'm glad you drew attention to how powerful the influence of parents are, and even mentors, even friends you respect. I know my parents certainly were. So thanks for drawing attention to that, Ty, and thanks for doing the digging. Now, our next teller's quote is from weatherman Fritz Coleman. "I've stopped exercising because I don't want to outlive my savings." She tells angry comics. Her name is Annie Corzin.
So I went to this little theater in Hollywood with a bunch of girlfriends where they were doing something called a spoken word show, storytelling show. I didn't know what that was, but I was having a really good time until this guy gets up and does a fictional stand-up bit about a whiny mieskite, which is Yiddish for an ugly person. And the title of his piece was "The Little Jap That Could." And I thought, really? Are we still making fun of Jewish American princesses? I am so tired of nasty jokes about Jewish women. Well, the comic was short and balding with glasses, and that's not a put down. I happen to like that type. They make the best lovers because they try harder. Anyway, I figure I'll just suffer through this jerk-off act in silence like I have a million times before. So he starts by reading the whiny little Jap's letters home from camp. "I am finally down to a size 1, but these uniforms are lacking in flair, and the counters are really strict. Whatever." And the big joke is that the whiny, ugly little Jap is Anne Frank, and the camp is Auschwitz. He continues, That train ride really sucked. No air conditioning. At least it was an express. Oh, arts and crafts is so boring. All we do is take gold out of teeth. Oh my God, did he really just say that? Are people really laughing and clapping? I don't want to make a scene, but I got to get out of here. But I'm stuck way up in a corner and I can't move. And my claustrophobia kicks in big time. You know, cold sweats, palpitations, the works. And then finally, one lone person in the audience stands up and shouts, "This is not funny. Get off the stage. You're an abomination." And it takes a moment before I realize that that one lone person was me. The show stops. Nobody backs me up. People shout at me to shut up and sit down. My girlfriends are polite Midwesterners. They pretend they don't know me. And the comic finishes his act to rousing applause. The next day, I call my friend Howard in New York. "And Frank, I'm nauseous, but don't you worry. What goes around comes around, and that little putz has earned himself a shitload of bad karma." I know Howard means well, but I don't really buy into that karma crap. Listen, a lot of evil goes not only unpunished, but rewarded. Just turn on the news. Anyway, I'm so upset about the whole experience that I medicate myself by spending a whole week in bed watching reruns of Friends. Much to my amazement, the producers of that spoken word show contact me and invite me to come back in a couple of weeks and do a story explaining my behavior. Now, you may wonder why I would even consider going back to that place. That's because you are not a performer. Someone is giving me a chance to take center stage. I will be witty. I will be charming. Everybody will laugh and love me and agree with everything I say. And then someone will offer me a job writing and starring in a sitcom called Annie's World. Not quite. When news of my projected appearance gets out, I start getting emails from the comic and his friends. "You will be forced off stage in the ugliest way possible, you fascist crone. You will die bitter and alone, you humorless hag. I'd like to kick you in your withered cunt." And then the messages start to get nasty. "You are the living personification of why Jewish men have contempt for Jewish women." Oh, so now it's all my fault. Well, what am I going to do? Should I cancel? What have I gotten into here? Listen, I am the world's fraidiest fraidy cat. I'm afraid of everything. I'm afraid when I replace the toilet roll, my finger's going to get caught in that springy thing. I'm afraid of Israelis. They always seem so angry, even when they're trying to be nice. Your performance was excellent." Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm afraid that when I go to the hairdresser, I'm going to lean too far back in the sink, damage an artery in my neck, and get a stroke. And by the way, that is a real thing. It's called salon stroke. Look it up. So, these are just thoughts in my head. But here, now, in the real world, I am getting serious threats of bodily harm from the world's most ruthless terrorist group, Angry Comics. What should I do? My friends will advise me this way and that. My husband says I have to follow my own instincts. But as always, the loudest voice is the one in my head, that of my mother, whose lifetime mantra was, "Watch out, be careful, it could be dangerous." But then I suddenly remembered that back in the Bronx, my mother shocked the whole building by daring to declare that the Rosenbergs did not deserve to be executed. And they all ganged up on her and called her a dirty communist and barred her from the Mahjong game. but she did not back down. And I thought, if my fearful, frightened, phobic mother could find the courage to stand up to a bunch of bullies, well, maybe I could do the same. So I decide to re-enter the lion's den and speak my mind. I couldn't sleep or eat for the weeks leading up to the event, which is a great thing because I lost a couple of pounds. We got extra police patrol in case of a disturbance. The theater was packed. The crowd was raucous. The producers placed a big burly bodyguard on the side of the stage. And I spoke. And I said, I believe that comedy is an art. And art should make you feel good about being alive. And that comic piece made me want to kill myself. And now I have to reveal something. My family is distantly related to the family of Anne Frank, which is a lie. I made it up, but who gives a fuck? Some people applauded. Others still accuse me of censorship. I don't know if I changed anybody's mind, but the good news is I did not get beaten up. And there's more good news. I don't know if Howard was right about that karma crap. I don't know if that comic had to spend every day for the rest of his life prepping for a colonoscopy. But the night that I presented my case was the first time I ever participated in a storytelling event. And I discovered that this, speaking my own words, is my true vocation. So the worst thing that ever happened to me turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. Facing the dark and the ugly led me to light and bliss. So maybe that was my karma, and I will be forever grateful to that scuzzy comic and his friends. Namaste.
Love that.
Well, Annie, sometimes anger can provide the fuel we need to stand up. When words just flow out of our mouths, as they did yours, spontaneously, in the heat of a moment. So thank you, Annie, thank you. Our next teller's quote is, "Only when we face it and embrace it can we choose to keep it or erase it." She tells because of you. Her name is Roxanne Reese.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good afternoon. Summer 1964. I just turned 12 years old, and my mother and father sent my older sister, Belinda, my brother John, and myself from Washington, D.C. to Wadesboro, North Carolina to spend time with our maternal grandparents. And for 3 whole days, I watched my grandfather kill and dismember a cow, and my grandmother summoning me to scratch her dandruff and oil her scalp. After that, I decided to venture up the long dirt road to the water tower on the other side of the tracks where the white folks lived. And that's where I met Ava, a feisty, tomboyish little white girl who was my same age. And for 2 whole weeks, we played in the dirt and laughed as we chased and caught lightning bugs in our mason glass jars. I have found a friend, and it made those long, hot days in North Carolina go by fast. "I'll race you up the water tower," Ava said. Now back then, that water tower looked awfully tall and I was afraid of heights. But if that's what Ava wanted to do, that's what I was gonna do too. So I let my fear and my adrenaline get me up that water tower. And I felt like I had wings because the next thing I knew, my feet were touching the ground again. And I fell down, breathing hard and laughing from the excitement of it all. When Ava came down from the water tower, she rushed over to me and her face was beet red and she said, "You beat me. You beat me, you nigger." Now, I had heard that word before, but it was never directed at me. Not like that. "My mother said you was nothing but a nigger." Why are you talking to me like that, Ava? And I've never even met your mother. And I thought you was my friend. Those words were in my head, but nothing was coming from my mouth. Ava had pierced my heart. She had hurt me. And all I remember was just walking away and saying nothing. And for the rest of the summer, I stayed close to my grandparents' house and I never saw Ava again. When I got back to DC, I felt a certain heaviness. I felt like a part of my innocence had been taken away. And I started viewing the world differently. I started viewing the world in black and white. Fast forward with me to high school. I changed my name to Nomathande. I was secretary of the Afro-American Club, and I wore a huge afro like Angela Davis, and I even joined the DC chapter of the Black Panther Party and adopted a militant attitude. Down with the pigs, white people are devils, and Black power. Upon entering Howard University, an all-Black college in Washington, D.C., I majored in sociology, and I participated in every protest march, every sit-in. "You white pig, you white oppressor, I hate you." Oh, God, such rage inside of me. I was arrested, but I was held in detention, so I never got a record, thank God. One day I found myself in front of the Fine Arts building at Howard University, and I walked into an acting class, and the teacher there was giving this sense memory exercise, and the students were going through all kinds of emotions. Some were laughing, some were crying, some were cursing, and I said, this might be a good place for me to unleash some of these emotions inside of me. So I majored in sociology and I minored in theater. And upon graduation, I won the Best Actress Owen Dotson Award at Howard University. And that inspired me to go to New York and pursue a career in acting. I did Broadway, I did regional theater, and then a friend suggested coming out to Los Angeles to do try to find some roles in acting, land some roles in acting. Came out to California, did television and television acting roles. Did television, did films. And when I made enough money to feel secure, I sent for my mother. Our father had passed several years before, and this was a good time for Mama and I to have some good bonding time. And for one whole month, I pampered my mother. I even took her to Las Vegas so she could play her favorite game of bingo and try her luck at that one-armed bandit slot machine. When it was time for Mama to leave, we were at the airport going through security. Now, this was a time when you could go through security with your loved ones, walk them to the gate, and even help them board the plane. And for some reason, I got into a heated argument with a white female TSA agent. And I don't even remember what the argument was about. All I remember is that feeling inside of me. And I was like a cobra, striking venomous, foul words to her. You white oppressor, you white devil, you this, you this. Oh, you can only imagine what I was saying to her. And as my mother and I were walking to the gate, my mother stopped her stride and she looked at me and she said, Roxanne, why do you hate white people? My mother who had been subjected to segregation and Jim Crow laws and God knows whatever other kind of discrimination she encountered, my mother was asking me that question. And my mother was a woman of very few words, but I could always feel what was going on inside of her. And that look of disappointment on her face. I never wanted to see that look of disappointment ever again. And it mattered. It matters what my mother felt about me because of my deep love and respect for her. And so it was because of you, Mama, that I sought to deal with my rage and my anger through therapy, self-help books, self-help classes, by any means necessary to never see that look on your face again. And I learned that everything and anyone who I allowed to hurt me was skip-a-looing on down the street, going about their business. And I'm still holding on to that hurt that I allowed them to do to me. And that experience with Ava was my first encounter of racism. And she represented every white person from that 12-year-old little girl to my adulthood. I had to let go. So thank you, Mama. Thank you for being a beacon of light and love for me and our family. I love you. I thank you. And I miss you greatly.
Yeah, Roxanne.
Wow.
Woohoo.
Wow.
Roxanne, you remind me of the power of the right question at the right time from someone you trust, hopefully.
Yes.
And the courage required to ask it. Thank you, Roxanne. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne.
Our next teller quotes both her parents who are now in heaven. The first one from her Irish da. Convert it to cash. Take that mouth of yours and convert it to cash. Then from her sly Italian mother, sparkle and circulate. She tells us her story, you look insane. Here's Susie Duff.
Thank you, beautiful Annie. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Holy cow, this is just great. And wow, I'm so honored to be in this group of tellers. And I just want to especially thank the three who've just gone, Roxanne Reese, because of you, so powerful, and Annie Corzin, Angry Comics, oh my gosh, Auschwitz, and Thai France, some people, that lady, holy cow, this is very, very powerful, and thank you so much. And I look forward to the tellers who are going to be coming next as well. And thank you, Annie, and thank you, new pastor Aaron, for putting all of this together. So bless you and thank you. And yes, I'm quoting my mom, and in order, I think, to really appreciate Sparkle and Circulate, you have to sort of hear it in my mom's voice. And so I'm going to channel her for you from heaven. And it goes a little something like this: sparkle and circulate. Sparkle and circulate. And this is what my mother said to me 47 years ago in 1973 at my sister's very big society wedding in my hometown of St. Louis, Missouri, in the heart of the heartland. And I see my great pal Doug Cox is on this call, and he's across the river from us in Illinois. And hi, Dukes, I'm so glad you're here. And he knew my mom, and she just thought he was darling. And so my mother was saying that, sparkle and circulate. She would come up to me, and I thought it was because I was the maid of honor, and she thought I was lingering too long with certain guests or something. So her little teeny, brilliant, beautiful Slytalian body would come up, and she'd have that little poker finger of hers with that little sharp nail, and it would go right in my back. And then in the back of my head, thinking she was speaking Soto, she wasn't, sparkle and circulate, sparkle and circulate. So I thought, okay, that was just me. And then I found out, no, that's what she had been doing to everyone in the wedding party at my sister's wedding, including the bride and the groom. And of course, my Irish da, who had paid for the whole thing. So after that wedding, for the next 5 decades, Sparkle and Circulate became the hue and cry of our family, the Duff family in St. Louis. And it became an adverb. It became an ad, I better sparkle and circulate this. If I was in trouble, I would say that. Or, I just sparkled and circulated this if I just snatched victory from the jaws of defeat. One of my favorite aspects of sparkling and circulating is that it ended up on the front page of the program of my mom's funeral booklet at the Catholic Mass for her funeral. It was her picture on the front, and underneath in very curly script was sparkle and circulate, her message to everyone from the rest of the beyond place. So I think she enjoyed it. I hope she did. I sure did. And also up there in heaven with my beautiful little mom is my Irish da, as Annie said, Jerry Duff. And at the end of every conversation on the phone that my father and I had from the time that I left St. Louis, in every major city that I lived in, anywhere in the world, whenever we would get off of the phone, he would say, convert it to cash. Take that mouth of yours and convert it to cash. I love you, I love you, I love you. I'm gonna go get under the covers, pull them up over my head, suck my thumb, and put a cold cloth over my head. Bye now. Because I probably just pushed him to the limit with some scam I was trying to figure out, or some scheme I wanted him to be a part of, or else probably I was asking him to represent another nefarious friend of mine who was indigent. My father was an attorney who was like a country doctor. He practiced all kinds of law and did so gratis for a lot of my friends. So sparkling and circulating and converting it to cash is exactly what came to my head when the good Dr. Ann Buxey asked us to respond to her question, it matters, what now? And it all comes together for me in 1996 in the very, very tip-top, most high region you can go, furthest north region rather, you can go in Northern Ireland. And I'm talking about a UNESCO World Heritage Site called the Giant's Causeway. And if you don't know about the Giant's Causeway, it's an astonishing piece of something. Very often it's called the Irish Stonehenge, which just infuriates the Irish because they don't want to have any comparison at any time to anything about the British Empire. The Giant's Causeway is over 40,000 basalt, which is like a salt and a mineral and a metal type thing. There are these pilings of in a prism shape, and they go hundreds of feet deep, and they start at the base of a cliff on the coast of Northern Ireland, and they go supposedly north through the Irish Sea all the way to Scotland. And no one knows the origin of the Giant's Causeway. We don't know if it's ancient artists or engineers or aliens. No one knows. And similarly, there's many legends about it. And what I can basically tell you for the sake of this call, it involves two giants, one from Scotland and one from Erie, as they call it, from Ireland, this bridge, this causeway, and a fight that was averted. And basically, the Giant's Causeway, in my view, is all about peace, which is why I wanted my then 9-year-old son, whose first name is Jerry Wolf, who was with me in Northern Ireland, to go to the Giant's Causeway with me. My son's name is Jerry Wolf because his father is an American Indian, and his father practices the old medicines, and he's what's called a traditional. And as a traditional, it's customary to name the firstborn son Wolf. I wanted to honor my Irish da, whose name is Jerry, so my son's first name is like the name Mary Ellen. It's 2 words. It's Jerry Wolf. So Jerry Wolf was learning about American Indian history and culture and ceremonies and spirituality, and he was clipping along pretty great with that. And all of a sudden I realized he doesn't know anything about his Western European culture, the Irish, the Italian. So we went to Ireland to find our past. And I wanted to go to Northern Ireland in particular because it was the seat of what it was then still called the Troubles, something that lasted 40 years in Ireland between the Catholics and the Protestants over the constitutional ownership of Northern Ireland. So we were on our way to the Giant's Causeway when I heard about the city of Armagh. Armagh, Armagh, in Northern Ireland is the seat of Roman Catholicism in Northern Ireland. Now, I didn't think Roman Catholics were allowed in Northern Ireland because they were firebombing them all the time. So I thought, wait a minute, I gotta go check this out. What is the seat? Where is the seat of Catholicism in Northern Ireland? Well, it's St. Patrick's Cathedral, like St. Pat's in New York. This was St. Patrick's Cathedral in Armagh. And I thought, on our way to the Giant's Causeway, we'll stop in, we'll light a candle, we'll say a prayer, and we'll make a strike for peace. We'll create a memory for a lifetime for Jerry Wolf about what we're doing to learn about the world of peace. Be careful what you pray for, because you're going to get it. I would love to tell you that Jerry Wolf remembers this story because it was this beautiful day about peace. And in the end, I guess you can say it really was. We found Armagh, we found St. Pat's, we found a parking spot down the street. We're walking on the sidewalk, and up comes this cherubic Irish Catholic school kid. How do I know this kid went to a Catholic school? The uniform. I wore 12 years of them. I can smell uniforms from they're coming behind me. The little blazer, the little short shorts that match colors, then in contrasting colors, the tie, the knee socks, the brogues, which are like golf shoes with a flap over them, except they're brown. And this little guy just sort of got in step with us. And I was about to say something hi to him when he turned and he looked at the copper-colored skin of my son, Jerry Wolf, and very deliberately said the N-word, and then continued on. So I would love to tell you that I channeled Mother Teresa, Donna Reed, Claire Huckabee, Nancy Drew, and was cool, calm, and collected and fabulous in that moment. I dropped my 9-year-old son's hand. We still hold hands to this day, I'm proud to tell you. And I dropped it then in a foreign city where we are strangers, and I took off like a rocket after that little thug. And he was faster than me, and it was like a scene out of Oliver Twist. He was dodging in between. It wasn't New York, but there were pedestrians, and the only thing that stopped him was that the light turned red at the end of the block. And I grabbed him by his scrawny little shoulders and I turned his little wiry body around and I looked right into his eye bones and I said, our son is an American Indian. Get it? He's an American Indian. And if you don't get it, you'll get it when you and I go to your principal's office. I know her and I will call her up. Well, his like, his eyes are like rolling back in his head and, you know, his teeth are chattering. And now passersby are like, who's this woman assaulting this child? And luckily for him, the light turned green. And with the white hot heat of a Nova, that kid like just, you know, finged out of my hands and shot across the street. And I pulled myself up and I looked at the people who had assembled and I said, good afternoon. And I looked and found Jerry Wolf standing almost exactly where he was, where I left him about a half a block prior. And I was walking toward him thinking I was, you know, going to have this moment with him where my mama bearness is going to be just, you know, rewarded. And he was going to have his arms outstretched and thank me for being his champion. And I realized he was talking to me as I was approaching, but I couldn't understand what he was saying. And until I got close enough to hear him say, you look insane. And I was like, what? And he said, you look insane. And then it was the third time he was speaking to me as if I was impaired. And he said it very, very slowly. And I just stopped and I went, okay, oh my God, what have I just done? Time for the bad mother's home. I cannot raise a biracial, multi-ethnic child. I don't know what I'm doing. Oh God. And so we went to God and we went to St. Pat's and we lit a candle and we said a prayer and we went to the causeway and it was amazing. The causeway was amazing. And that night we were in one of those delicious, twinkly bed and breakfasts that populate the countryside of Ireland. And Jerry Wolf was in bed and I was doing my evening ablutions and I went to kiss him goodnight. And he said, you know, and I was like, here we go again. I look insane. I was bad. And he goes, the causeway, Mom, he called me Mamas with a Z. Mamas, the causeway, it's amazing. How does that even happen? How does stuff like that work? And I looked at his eyes and I saw this sense of adventure and wonder and fantasy and curiosity. And I saw this wellspring of good coming. And there was a mention, one, of this situation with this child in Armagh. And we chatted about it. And as he fell asleep, I was thinking about it. And I was thinking like the love that was pouring out of my son's eyes. I just remember thinking to myself, hold on to that. Hold on to that love. It's like a treasure chest. It's like a treasure trove. It's like a cache of love, a cache. And I heard my Da's voice, converted to cash. And I thought, oh, that druid. Oh my God, for 25 years, he's been telling me to convert it to cash. I hear cha-ching. It could also be C-A-C-H-E, a bunch of love, a bunch of good. Find the good, convert it to good. That's how you raise children, whether they're biracial, whether they're multi-ethnic, whatever. That's how you deal with people. You find the love, you find the good, you find that cash. It's there all the time. My dad was trying to tell me that for the 25 years that we had started the Converted to Cash dialogue. So he sparkled and circulated that one, didn't he? That old druid, God love him. He was telling me all along and I'm thinking it's dollars. To the good Dr. Ann Buxey's question, it matters. What now? Here's, Annie, what I think. Love matters. That's for now and forever. Thanks.
Yay.
Susie, what I think is that sometimes our sanity does need breaking. Let the light in. And thank you, Susie, for your light.
Thank you, Annie.
Story.
Thank you for including me.
Our next quote is from Charles Schulz. Don't worry about the world coming to an end today. It is already tomorrow in Australia. This teller tells us a story called All of Us. His name is Carlos Kotkin.
And thank you. I know we were supposed to have our cameras on. I just want to let you know. Can you hear me, Ann? Is everything?
Yes.
Okay. I have a 6-year-old and a cat who have been causing all sorts of trouble coming in and out. So I turned the camera off in case it distracted anyone. And we might have visitors during the story. So just a heads up to everyone. Hopefully not, but we'll find out. That's part of the adventure. I'm gonna get rid of my picture and all right. Okay. Hello, everyone. As you've just heard, my name is Carlos. When I travel to Mexico to visit relatives, people on occasion call me Charlie because I live in the United States. And when I'm home in the United States, people on occasion call me Jose because it's close enough to Carlos. Sometimes for some people, any Spanish name will do. I don't have a middle name. My full name is Carlos Kotkin. My dad is from here, from Southern California, Jewish. My mother is from Mexico City, raised Catholic. My parents met in Mexico City. Before they got married, my mother told my father she would never be able to have children. Numerous doctors confirmed this. So I wasn't supposed to happen. I am a miracle, which makes it a miracle that you are listening to me right now. If you had known my mother's doctors, they would have told you years ago that you would never be listening to me in a Tales by the Sea virtual show. But here I am with my feet firmly planted in two very different cultures. I enjoy eating chicken enchiladas with mole as much as a bowl of matzo ball soup. I do have to say, I will never enjoy the taste or smell of gefilte fish. No, thank you. Being a part of these two cultures has given me a broad perspective. It's influenced the way I approach people. It reminds me that everyone has their own story. I try to always remember this. I don't always succeed. In 2002, in my bachelor days, I took a trip to Australia for fun. And in preparation for my trip, I studied the Australian language, which is very similar to English. In case anyone's interested, I can teach you how to say, how much does this cost in Australian? All you have to do is say a woman's name. Her first name's Emma, last name Chiswick. Walk into any Australian store, pick up any item, ask the person working there, Emma Chiswick, and they will tell you the price of that item, I promise. For part of my trip to Australia, I traveled with a tour group on a bus with people from all over the world. There were people from Canada, Britain, France, Japan, New Jersey, everywhere. There was a man from Germany who was married with 3 kids, and he was on this trip alone. He told me that once a year he took a vacation by himself, and at the time I thought, that's terrible. What kind of a man would leave his family like that? But now that I'm married with a child, I totally get it. And for the record, I was granted permission by my wife to say that. I don't want to kiss and tell, but I will say that I had a bit of success with the ladies during my trip to Australia, in no small part because of my name. In Australia, women often swooned when they heard my name was Carlos. It was exotic. I was exotic. A Canadian woman on the bus who took a liking to me genuinely asked if there were a lot of people named Carlos in Los Angeles. I told her there were a few, probably about a dozen. All in all, it was a super fun trip with a super fun group, except for the Dutch people. there were two guys from the Netherlands in our group who, they looked like travel buddies to me. I never once saw them smile. They struck me as bullies. The only reason I knew they were from the Netherlands is because on the first day of our trip, we all had to stand at the front of the tour bus, speak into a microphone, say our names and where we were from. The way the two Dutch guys introduced themselves was so rigid and stern, I was sure they had never laughed at a joke their entire adult lives. The only time I ever saw them laugh on the trip was when our group stopped at an Aboriginal cultural center. We were given boomerang lessons, and when I threw my boomerang, I accidentally chucked it into the ground, straight into the ground, and it immediately cracked in half. That's the only time I saw the Dutch guys chuckle. We went to a koala bear sanctuary. Our guide plucked a koala bear from a tree so everyone could pose for a photo while holding the bear. And the Dutch guys did not want to hold the koala bear. Who doesn't want to hold a koala bear? I stayed away from these two the entire trip. I made an effort to avoid them, though I was always aware of them scowling in the background. On the last day of my trip, as I was leaving the hotel, as I got into a cab, the Dutch guys suddenly rushed out with their luggage and asked if I was heading to the airport. And when I told them I was, they decided to join me because they were also heading to the airport. So off we went. And they were more talkative than I expected them to be. They asked if I had enjoyed my trip. They wondered what brought me to Australia. I told them curiosity brought me. And then I asked, out of courtesy, what brought them to Australia. It turned out the Gay Olympics brought them to Australia, and they decided to take a tour afterwards. They were married. One was super doting and super proud to tell me his husband won a gold medal in the shot putting event. They talked the whole way to the airport, and it turns out the reason why they were so rigid and stern the first day on the bus was because public speaking made them super nervous. They laughed when I broke the boomerang because one of them had done the same thing earlier. And they didn't want to carry the koala bear because they felt bad about how it was being treated as an object. So they were being much more considerate toward the koala bear than I was. The Dutch guys were so affectionate and caring toward each other. They were so happy and in love. They were so not at all who I thought they were. And as we said goodbye at the airport, I found myself regretting that I hadn't got to know them better on our trip. They were fun and interesting. They were completely the opposite of who I had decided they were in my mind. I had fallen into the trap of making assumptions and judgments without having any idea of who they really were, which is especially ridiculous because I've had similar assumptions made about me. I was out for a walk once near my building when I ran into a neighbor, Barbara, who lives on the 4th floor. Barbara was with a friend I didn't know. Apparently, Barbara's friend used to live in our building. When Barbara introduced me, she said, "This is Carlos. He's from the building too." And Barbara's friend, she gave me a quick glance, and she said, "Oh, do you work in the building?" She heard the name Carlos and came to a singular conclusion. Since the woman was Barbara's friend and Barbara is my friend, I just said, "It's very nice to meet you." And I walked away. I left it at that. Making assumptions is such an easy, natural trap to fall into. We all do it. Some people live in that trap their entire lives. And it's sad to think of all that they're missing. In these turbulent times where we're trying to figure out solutions to racial inequity on a grand macro scale, which we should be doing, I'm reminded that there are things that we can also do on a smaller micro scale. Whenever I'm in a situation where I'm meeting someone for the first time and I find myself making determinations and conclusions about them based on a limited amount of information, I remember the Dutch guys in Australia. And I remember the woman who asked me if I work in the building where I live. And I remember that the reason why I am a miracle is because everyone is a miracle, all of us, each with our own stories to tell. And if we take a moment to stop and truly listen to those stories, life is so much richer. Thank you for listening to mine.
Yay!
Thanks, Carlos.
Yay. So beautiful.
Boy, Carlos, you know, you remind me, as you intended to, of how easy it is to judge someone and how important it is to give ourselves a second opinion, even if it just means being quiet for a little while. So thanks, Carlos. Oh, now our last teller is S. Pearl Sharp. I'm not sure she's going to tell today. Do you know if she's here, Erin?
Yes, she is here. S. Pearl, could we hear you for a second? Is your audio okay?
Thank you, Anne. Thank you so much for doing this important program. To be young, gifted, and black, oh, what a lovely, precious dream. To be young, gifted, and black. When I heard Nina Simone singing that song, I knew she was singing about me. I was young, gifted, and black, and I was a race woman. In the Black community, a race man, a race woman, is someone who just loves being with their own people more than being with any other group. And they're going to work to protect them and make sure for the group's survival. I was entering in Bowling Green State University in Ohio in 1960. It was the first year that the college had intentionally integrated the dormitories. I met young white people from small towns. This was their first time being in the presence of a Black person. And there was a co-ed in my dorm who had been taught by her parents that Negroes, which is what we were called back then, that Negroes tended to have larger behinds because we had tails. Soon I became friends with Anne. Both of us were music majors. Anne was focusing on piano, and I was focusing on voice. I liked working with her. And Anne had a really vibrant kind of curiosity. She had great questions. The civil rights movement was very active then, and she had some challenging questions for me sometimes. By my sophomore year, Anne had become my accompanist of choice. We worked well together, and I needed her honest critique. In our junior year, I was invited to do a solo concert at a large church in my hometown, Cleveland, Ohio. Now, I knew pianists, I knew music teachers, but I just wanted Anne to be at the piano more than anything. It took some convincing, but finally she agreed and she came to Cleveland. Just before the concert started, I realized Anne was more nervous than I was. She confided later, I think there were 10,000 people in that church. Maybe there weren't that many, but I was the only white person there. And I felt so ill at ease because nobody looked like me. Now, I have such a feeling for what you're going through. And then it was senior recitals, and then we were free. Anne returned to her hometown to pursue her music career. I took the Greyhound bus to the Big Apple. Say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud, say it loud. James Brown. New York was my alternative school. It was my freedom school. I was learning about Black consciousness, Black nationalism, Pan-Africanism. I met people who did not believe in nonviolent action. Soon I was one of the speak your truth poets, and I could diss folks with my black power fist in the air. Yeah. But when Anne and her husband said they were coming to New York for a vacation, I said, great. And we hung out for a whole afternoon. And I just remembered she still had her curiosity, and she was still one of my biggest fans. In the mid-1970s, Hollywood had more of a need for Black actors, and so I moved to Los Angeles. I was also an activist, and I was a co-founder of The Bad Sea, which was the Black Anti-Defamation Coalition. We were not the most welcome group in Hollywood. And I was right in the throes of all that when Anne tracked me down, said she had a quick flight to Los Angeles, and could we have lunch? Anne came into the restaurant all bubbly and warm, and I found myself feeling very self-conscious because here I was in public with this white woman and who appeared to be a friend, and it just didn't feel comfortable. Anne was telling me she wanted to catch up on everything about my career, and I was kind of selfish about what I shared with her. And Anne was working on this really important project to build an art center in her town. She was raising millions of dollars for it. And I was like kind of nonchalant. And then she was showing me her pictures of her husband and her adorable children. And I was like, uh-huh. Gradually, of course, she realized that something was wrong here, and she got quiet, and then the silence became indigestible. So what was happening here? I think that the degradation and the defamation of my people, of Black and brown skinned people, by white people around the world for centuries, had just become in my psyche like a wound that would not heal. And so Anne, through no personal action of her own, had become the other. She was part of the history. She was the history of colonialism and slavery and Jim Crow and lynching and job discrimination and just all the other things that are happening. I couldn't see her as the person she was. And so in that moment, I forgot that we did our junior recitals together. I forgot that when I had earned membership in the National Honor Society, Music Honor Society, and several white members in the local chapter tried to block me because of my race, Anne was one of the music students who stood up for me. I forgot that Anne really embraced the value of my people in the United States. I was so consumed with my people being treated as humans that I forgot my humanity. The good thing about growing old is that you get a little more time to clean up some of your messes. And so after a few years, for some reason, that lunch started to come back to me and kind of haunt me. Each time it was just there and I couldn't let it go. And I realized I needed to find Anne and apologize, even if it was years later. So I called the alumni office and they didn't have any current information on her. I knew she was not living in her hometown, but I couldn't remember where she was living. And then the years would go by, and then we had Facebook and we had those websites where you can find your classmates, and I didn't find anything. And more years passed. And then a couple of weeks ago, I realized I wanted to share this story with you today, but the story didn't have an ending. Anne and I realized, are both on the awesome 3/4 mark on life's calendar. So instead of going the normal route, I went to obituaries. I started looking at obituaries in her hometown, in the towns near that hometown. I saw people that might have been a relative. That person definitely is her relative. And then I found her. But it wasn't her obituary. It was her sister-in-law's obituary. And she was listed in the survived by listing, and her sister-in-law had just died 8 months ago, so there was a possibility. So I get back on the web and I'm digging and I'm digging, and I end up on a website for the state of Ohio phone company. And it lists everybody in the state of Ohio who had a listed number. There she was. Last Sunday, I sat with my phone in my hand. My stomach was really kind of queasy, and I was rehearsing what I would say if she picked up the phone. She didn't hang up on me. She might not even remember who I was, because it had actually now been around 30 years since we had spoken, around 30 years since we had been in that restaurant. I dialed. Before I could finish identifying myself, I heard, "Oh, I would know that voice anywhere. I just wish I could give you a big hug right now." I wasn't expecting. We began catching up immediately. She was now a widow, but she'd been married to her husband for 53 years. He's taking care of her mom. She's still playing piano places. And she told me that her grandsons, our grandchildren, are out protesting right now in the Black Lives Matter protest and the police brutality protest. And being Anne, she had one of those questions for me. She said, "You know, my nervousness is just so high about the peril of your people right now. And so I have been having just gatherings with my friends and talking about it. And I think I understand it. I mean, I understand Black Lives Matter. But what I want to know, honey, is why don't all lives matter?" As I was trying to get to that answer for her, I also wanted to get in the reason for my call, which was my apology. I let it tumble out of me. Anne doesn't even remember having a lunch in Los Angeles with me after all these years. She said, "You know, I have elevated serotonin, and anything negative, it just stops it from going to my brain, which I guess can be a blessing sometimes." So I am older, Black, still Black, and that's a wonderful dream. And what I learned through this is that I am still a race woman, but I had to bring grace to the race. Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, Pearl. Your story and all the stories today, show me at any rate the many ways that, as you said in your quote from Desmond Tutu that I did not get to share, we are different precisely in order to realize our need for one another. My humanity is caught up, is inextricably bound up in yours. And there are so many ways that one of us affects all of us. And there are so many ways to heal. And thank you, S. Pearl. Thank you all again. Maybe in these stories, we found something that we would like to discuss more. So if the audience wants, you can stay for the talk back. My co-host, Aaron Stenberg and Tabitha will coordinate the talk back. This feels like a relay. I now hand you the stick, Aaron.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all of the storytellers. I cannot tell you how powerful and moving each and every one of your stories was. It gives us so much to think about and also to discuss. So we wanted to share with you and allow some time. If you are able to stay, we encourage you to do so. And if not, that is okay as well. If you must depart, that is all right. But if you would like to stay for a time of talk back and asking questions of our storytellers, we would like to invite you to do so. There's a couple different ways that we can do this. There are a lot of us here. We had over 200 people joining for this Tales by the Sea today, which is powerful and amazing and wonderful. I have hopefully allowed you all the opportunity to use the chat feature. I'm going to make sure that you guys can do that. To use the chat feature, take your mouse if you're using a computer and hover it over your screen, on the bottom there is a chat bubble. If you click on that, a chat box will pop up to the right. In that chat box, you should be able to send a message to everyone in the meeting. And Tobiatha and I will be monitoring that chat box. And if anyone has questions or comments, you can see the comments as you scroll through there, but we will lift up some of your questions to the storytellers. We would ask if you have a particular question to a particular storyteller, you would just let us know. You would put that in the chat box. Or if it's general to all of them, we will just invite the storytellers to answer as they will and to unmute themselves.
Do they need to check participants?
No, Tobiatha and I will look through the comments, but they are storytellers who are welcome to do that as well.
Quite a few questions.
And so we have a question from Deborah, who says that all the stories were so relevant, but there was a question for Ty. How old were you and where were you? I don't remember hearing, is the question from Deborah.
Tell Ty to unmute.
Ty, are you there?
It looks like we have
He was
answers.
in Houston.
Texas and 11 years old, it says.
Yeah.
All right. Judy has a comment about Carlos's presentation.
I'm nervous.
Judy, if you would like to unmute and ask or share your comment, we'll invite you to do so.
Hey, can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
It's just that I wanted to tell a supposedly true story about the golf pro Lee Trevino, or maybe Trevino, I might be mispronouncing his name, but supposedly he was mowing his lawn in front of his home in Texas, and a lady stopped by and said to him, "Do you speak English?" And he said, "Yes, I do." He said, "How much do you charge to mow a lawn?" So he said, "Well, the lady of the house allows me to sleep with her." And at this, the lady quickly drove off, you know, but it's about stereotypes and assumptions. I think it's a good example.
Great answer.
Thank you so much for Judy for sharing that. I'm going to invite Wendy Hammers. She wanted to share a specific detail of Ty's story that really touched her. So Wendy, if you're there, go ahead and unmute yourself. We'd love to.
I am. Hi, everyone. Thank you for a gorgeous afternoon. I enjoyed all the stories, and I was particularly moved at the beginning of Ty's story when, as a little boy at that front door, he first realized what had happened to him, and yet he had to go into automatic pilot and just respond as if it was completely normal. And that was a theme I saw in several of the stories, that when in the face of racism or people making assumptions about who you are based on how you look, that you have to act like, oh, it's just normal. It's just that's how people treat me. And it broke my heart so much that he wasn't either able or in a position to speak his truth at that age. He just kind of had to go with it. And I found that really devastating and beautifully shared. And so I just want to say that.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Wendy. We did have a question. Notice that we are recording this Tales by the Sea. We are going to give this over to the storytellers and take a look at it afterwards, and we'll determine how and when and where and if we can provide this for everyone. So if that does happen, we will certainly contact you. We will send an email out to everyone who RSVP'd and the whole list of folks, and we will let you know. Marcy Wingard would like to share a comment about S. Pearl Sharp's story. So Marcy, if you would like to unmute yourself, we would love to hear from you.
Well, S. Pearl, I was at Miami University just about the same time you were at Bowling Green. And I was from Chicago. I had known Black people, and I met a wonderful woman whose name was Barbara, a young woman who was a freshman with me. And she was a very large, very tall woman, Black woman. And she was from, of all places, Salt Lake City. And I wanted to be friends with her. And I tried to be friends with her. And finally she said to me, I can't be friends with you. And I remember I was 17. I was very naive. And I looked at her and I said, but why not? And she said, I'm Black and you're white. And that for me was the first time I think I was really aware of the divide. And what you told in your story about here, you'd had this interaction, and yet there came a point where you felt separated. That was the first time I had felt separated, because I had not been taught that at home. And yet she was not comfortable being friends with a white person. And I've often thought about her all these years later. I can still see her. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Marcy.
No, you chat.
David has a comment, a quick story about evil and prejudice. David, would you like to unmute yourself and share?
Sure. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you.
No, actually, it was Evie and prejudice. This was when I lived in Los Angeles. Now I'm in Bermuda, but when I lived in Los Angeles in the 90s, a woman named Evie, who had been in Dachau with her mother, told me a story. She took a friend of me in through the Museum of Tolerance, and near the end of it, she'd been in front of Mengele twice, and there was all this stuff. She said, the Americans, the U.S., liberated Dachau, and she said the man who liberated her was an American sergeant who was Black. And she said, I had never seen a Black man before. She said, and I thought he was der Teufel. He was the devil. And I was filled with horror. She said, here I was 2 years in Dachau, and this man has filled me with horror. And I said, well, Evie, how'd you get over it? And she paused and she said, I didn't. I said, what do you mean? She said, every time a Black man comes up from behind me and surprises me, I feel the terror. She said, but I knew what the Nazis had done to me, and I promised myself I would never let that terror, never let my feelings override. So I thought, so it's an act of will, isn't it? So that's a story, a true story. God bless Evie wherever the hell she is.
Thanks, David.
Okay. Sure.
Glad you were here.
I'm glad you're there too. You're just the glory of it all.
Paulette made a comment of thanks for this platform to hear all of the stories, and a shout out to the Giant Causeway as being a fantastic site to visit, and shares a favorite quote from Desmond Tutu. If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. Donna Castleberry has a question for Roxanne. She asks, did she and her mother ever talk about the incident again?
No. Oh, can you hear me?
We can. Oh, you just muted yourself.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
We didn't. I went and got help, Miss Castleberry. And through it all, living, as Pearl said, I wanted to say at the end that love we can give to ourselves and to one another. And I want to thank my mother and love for loving me to ask me that question.
Hmm.
And so she never, no, Miss Castleberry, she never had, again, because I got some help. Because just like I said, you know, I was only hurting myself. Holding on to pain, holding on to that anger was only hurting me. And that's what I realized after a while. It wasn't hurting anybody else. Like I said, they were skip-to-looing all down the street, going about their business. And I'm still holding on. So to pain. Don't want to hold on to it, and I have to let it go because it gets in your body and it's, oh, you got a disease. Ms. Castleberry, for the question.
Thank you so much. We have a question from Compassionate Hands. If any of the storytellers have children, how has your experience taught them how to treat others that are different from them?
Great.
I don't have any kids.
And as they are pondering, as they are thinking, if any of them would like to share, we did have a question of having the images of the people speaking be illuminated. What I would suggest, if you are on a computer, if you hover your mouse over the screen, on the very top right, you will see something that says either speaker view or gallery view, either a bunch of little dots in a grid, or you will see speaker view. If you click on that, you can click back and forth. And if you want to see highlighted the person speaking, just click on speaker view and you will see that. But
Mine actually hasn't been working. I think there's an override that you have on, Erin.
Oh, let me take that off. My apologies. You are correct. I spotlighted myself, which I did not want to do. Haha. That's not my personality, but there we go. All right. It should work now. Elena, is that working? Is that working now?
No, she's muted.
I have it on gallery view. If you're on speaker view, do you see me?
Yes.
Okay, then it's working.
Okay, great. So if any of the storytellers would like to broach the question of how this is translated to your children.
Well,
Annie?
Yeah, I'll just say, and I have not really solved this yet, but I have a Black grandchild. He was adopted from the day one. And so now I'm a member of an interracial family. And there are questions every step of the way. But mostly what I do is worry. I worry about him. I worry about his safety. I worry about his future. I told my kids, when he gets older, you have to give him a pair of glasses, have him wear a pair of glasses, even if he doesn't wear glasses, and carry a violin, even if he doesn't play the violin, because of the things we've been talking about here. I don't want anybody making assumptions. Also, he's very big and very dark. He also happens to be very brilliant, very sensitive, and remarkable in every way, and better than anybody else's grandchild that ever lived. I mean, I'm just saying that. That's just a matter of fact. But it has brought all kinds of interesting new considerations into my life as a white person.
Thank you, Annie.
I have something. Interesting enough, my kids are smarter than me. So what I have to do is be careful not to bring in some of that old school teaching that I had to shake, because that didn't match me. You know, I wasn't quick to punch somebody, or, I mean, I thought about it, but it wasn't my first choice, because I knew that their situation was based on where they were brought up, you know? So what I found that I would do is, instead of reacting right away, for instance, I get asked or get told, hey, you don't sound Black. I mean, okay, used to be, I already knew what that meant. And that assumption in itself would cause a certain amount of dedicated reaction. So what I do now, and I told my kids, is I'd say, what do you mean by that? Because in that moment, it causes them to actually explain that. And when they do, they can see how stupid that sounds. So what I tend to do is and I share this with my kids, instead of reacting, because, just based on what they know, find out what they know. And then in the process of doing that, they will realize it's stupid. And then you don't have to say anything. So yeah, they think that they found me to be interesting because I have that reaction. And because of that, I don't have to go around punching people. I like that. I like that.
Thank you, Ty. There is a question for Roxanne from Jeremiah, but I'm not.
Oh,
are you with us, Roxanne?
Yeah, can you hear? Oh, wait a minute.
Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay,
and the question is, what does, and I'm going to pronounce this wrong, I think, nomathande mean from your days in high school?
Oh, gosh almighty. A bearer of beautiful, Jeremiah. Okay, his picture came up. A bearer of beautiful Black children. And I did.
What did she say?
But biologically, but I have nieces and nephews, and they are my children. So thank you, Jeremiah, for that's what it means. A beautiful Black.
Okay.
Huh? What'd you say?
I say you're welcome, Aunt Roxanne.
That's my nephew. I love you, Jeremiah. I love you, Michelle.
Love you too. Love you too.
All right, our next question is for Ty from HH. When the woman said she would buy all your candy, what do you think she meant by it? Remorse, accountability, separation, etc.
Wow, nice. Well, as a 12-year-old, I was just excited she's buying all my candy. But as an adult, I knew what that was. It was a realization that what just happened shouldn't have happened. And maybe she wasn't the one who even taught him that. Could have been someone else in the family. But she knew, and it was her way of trying to make it better. Because I imagine I looked pretty hurt, as a 11-year-old, I should say. I imagine I had that look on my face of confusion on what the hell just happened. Why did it happen? And I'm out here trying to make my little money, so help me out. We'll get past this, and hopefully I don't have to go to therapy. And so I'm not 100% sure. I don't mind therapy, by the way, don't get me wrong. But yeah, I'm not really sure, but I knew in the moment that it felt like she was just trying to fix it and make me feel better.
Thank you so much, Ty. We do have a question for Annie from Ashton. But thanks to all of the storytellers. But the question is for Annie. Ashton says, I was brought up in New York City from K through 9th grade. My classes were half Black and half white students. Included in the white, however, were only 2 Jewish students, my friends, the twins, Peter and Judy. I often felt bad that they were left out and considered different. Did you experience anything like that?
I'm curious, where was that? Where in New York was that, Ashton? What part of New York?
That was in Manhattan.
That was in Manhattan. That's interesting. Well,
Yeah.
I'm a zillion years older than you are, and I was brought up in an absolutely 100% Jewish immigrant community, and I hated it. I always hated the Bronx, and I always knew that I wanted to live in a place where not everybody was alike.
Yeah.
I mean, I did that from a kid, and I've succeeded in that, fortunately. But that's so funny. And the thing is, even though everybody was Jewish, I still felt like a misfit. Just because we were all Jewish didn't mean we were all alike. And I just didn't feel I belonged there. So there you go. But I appreciate the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie and Ashton.
Thank you. Question for Roxanne, and you are unmuted right now, so we should be able to hear you. The question is, have you forgiven the little girl? named Ava.
Oh yeah, did I say that? Yes, because that was the journey. That was a journey of forgiveness. Not only forgiving her, but I had to forgive myself. First and foremost, forgiving for allowing for allowing myself to do that to myself, to hold on to that pain and that anger, you know, and the pain and anger that holding on to that pain and anger was causing me. Oh yes, I smiled at Ava, and I know she was just like that little boy came to the door with a popsicle with Ty. You know, she was a product of her environment too. Her mother instilled that word in her, you know, and she was angry. And looking at this as an adult, she was angry because I beat her up that water tower, and she wanted to get back, and she was mad because she was a little tomboy, and she was supposed to win. You know what I mean? And she didn't win. Get you back because my a bad one. You hurt because I beat her. You know, so I understand that as an adult, but 12 years old and
I think that's it.
Thank you so much, Roxanne. I'm so sorry.
It was rehabilitating because the girl. Huh?
You froze up for a second there, but we've got you back now, I think.
I said, I in the 2 weeks that we were together, I loved that little girl. I mean, I instantly fell in love with her. I mean, you know, just because I just loved her energy, and we just got along so well. And then to have her say that to me, it hurt me. It hurt me deeply. So, and I carried that, like I said, I carried that. She was my first real encounter of racism. And I carried that hurt and that pain from someone who I loved. That makes it run even deeper. But yes, oh yes, I smile at her. I smile at little Ava now because only when I can forgive her can I be free. And I'm free.
Thank
free
you.
At last. Free at last.
Thank you so much, Roxanne. I love how you phrased it, the journey of forgiveness.
Yes, 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 yes. We have to forgive. We have to forgive.
To all of the tellers, the question from Deborah is, how old were you when your epiphanies were truly felt and shared?
For me?
For any of the storytellers.
How?
Hard to say. I'm still learning. I'm having new epiphanies all the time. So.
Yeah, I agree with Penny. I agree
we
with
keep getting older and wiser. I'm afraid I'm going to have to leave. I'm so sorry. I didn't know we were going. Is that okay?
Of course. For any
I
of you.
didn't know if you had a time. Was there a time that are we scheduled to stop at a certain time?
No.
At 11 p.m.
Right.
When we spoke about this in rehearsal, we actually raised up, I think, 11 or 12 or midnight.
Midnight it was.
But for any
goodbye, everybody.
Who
and I love it. And I love this audience. And thank you so much for allowing me to be here.
Bye, Annie.
Bye, Annie. Thank you so much.
Annie.
Thank you, Annie.
Love the
Bye-bye.
story.
Bye.
Well, friends, I don't see any other questions in the chat field, but I see your heartfelt expressions of gratitude for our time together today, for all of the powerful stories and just the vulnerability in sharing those stories with us today. And so in order to close us, I'm going to invite Anne, and I will turn it over to her, and I will spotlight her video.
Thank you, Erin. One second to also let you know there were so many beautiful things that were said in the chat. And if you're on the computer, you can click on the 3 dots in the chat and save it if you want to look back at it, anybody.
Oh, thank you for reminding
me so
us.
much.
Thank
I will definitely do that as well.
It's always beautiful to see how many other stories turn up in each of us when we spend time together doing this. you know, I have a problem with that because I want to hear all of them from all of you. So I hope to see you again, you know, online or in person, and take good care of each other until then. And I hope Tales will be back. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Anne.
Yeah. Great job. Great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you all, everybody. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you.
So important.
Welcome. Thank you.
Tails.
Bye-bye.
The tales to come alive.
Yes.
Thank you, Annie. Thank you. I'm reading.